tested every day in 1,000 little ways, in the ordinary things. And if we are proactive in those things, it gradually develops extraordinary capability in handling major setbacks or disappointments. But oftentimes, we look into the more spectacular, the more dramatic, the larger issues to see the obvious energy of proactivity, of habit one. For instance, Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist, imprisoned in the death camps of Nazi Germany because he was a Jew, experienced unbelievable indignities and tortures. He was raised in the Freudian tradition that you're basically a product of your childhood. He worked on that assumption, that paradigm. But while he was in the death camps, he began to observe some very interesting things. Some people were animals, others were saints, with the same circumstances. He himself experienced terrible things. Some of his own loved ones were cremated. He expected the same fate. For some reason, they saved him for experimental purposes. One day, they stripped him naked, put him under white light, and began to perform those ignoble sterilization experiments upon his body. And he discovered what he called the last human freedom. The power to choose my response to any condition, to anything that happens to me. He called the last human freedom. And he cultivated a sense of meaning so that he saw himself in his imagination lecturing to his students in Austria following his release from the death camp about the very experiences he was having at the time, about the insights, the learnings he was acquiring. And he came to postulate that the highest value at all is the power to choose your attitude in situations over which you have no control. That was the last human freedom. Do you want to see evidence of that? How many of you have ever had a loved one, a dear friend, family member, go through a terminal illness with a magnificent attitude? How many have experienced that? Now look at the hands, look at the number. How many of you were enormously inspired by such modeling? Same hands. I just saw that with my sister, Marilyn, who just recently passed away. The night before she died, she told me, my only desire is to teach my children and my grandchildren how to die with dignity and with a desire to contribute and to live life nobly and based on principles. And the cancer inside her lungs was like a tree growing up. But her whole focus during the months, even years that preceded this, was constant teaching. Those children and grandchildren and friends and loved ones will be inspired and ennobled by such modeling, such mentoring the rest of their lives. Between what happens to us, the stimulus, whatever has happened to us, or what is now happening to us, between that stimulus and our response is a space. In that space lies our power and our freedom to choose our response. In these choices lie our growth and our happiness. In other words, with the right choices, eventually the response we choose begins to influence the stimulus. This is what Viktor Frankl discovered. And through exercising his memory, that is his self-awareness, and his imagination, and his conscience, by asking questions such as, what is this situation asking of me instead of what do I ask of it? Why are they doing this to me? And also by exercising his own independent will, this freedom became larger and larger until it was larger than his Nazi captors. Not his liberty. Liberty is a condition of the environment. Liberty is a condition of the externals. Freedom is a condition of the person, of the internals. We have control over our freedom, not in the short run over our liberty. However, in many situations, not necessarily all, the more you control your freedom and expand and deepen it, eventually you will influence the liberty of your life, the options, the alternatives that are available to you. Eventually, your head will create your world. Your response to the stimulus will eventually influence the stimulus. Your response to the stimulus will eventually influence the stimulus. The hypothesis, or try to look at the hypothesis. What enables these people in the death camps to survive? Is it their survival skills? No. Is it their intelligence? No. Is it their health? No. Those things were eventually equalized, lost. Helped a little initially, but eventually they were gone. Is it their family structure? No. The thing that enabled survival was a vision of the future, a sense of meaning about a work yet to do, a contribution yet to make. And this became the basis for his brilliant autobiographical account of these experiences called Man's Search for Meaning. Even a friend of his was so miserable he wanted to commit suicide, and Frankel pressed him, "Why don't you?" He said, "Because if I predeceased my wife, it would make her so unhappy and miserable, and I love her so." That alone gave him meaning to survive. And he would constantly ask the question, what is life asking of you in this situation? Don't let the things you can do nothing about interfere with the things you can do a great deal about.